Okay, here comes part 2 of the 9-loop braid video, and I was here. I have just braided you should see part 1 first to know what I'm talking about, but I've just braided a short length, about 1.5 inches, or a little over 1 inch of square braid. Maybe I should bring this out. Well, I'll show it afterwards. I mean, you all have probably seen a square braid. And then I divided that into 2 little flat braids, one on top of the other. This is going to form the loop. I'm going to join it up again, but I'm going to join with braiding a flat version of the square braid. It should braid as looking somewhat like a square braid, because it is a 2-layer braid. And now I'm going to connect the 2-layer braid on one side and not connect it on the other. So it would be like this divided part, but it'll be connected on one side. So I'm going to go through the first 4 loops, and now I'm going to take the loop as for a square braid from above, and taking the upper shank, which is the one closest to the operator finger hand. The loop got a turn, a clockwise turn. Now, though, on the other side of the braid, the side that is forming the right side of the braid, I'm going to go through all the loops, including the thumb loop, as I have been doing. You know, there's something funny about this. I see a twist in that. I must have done that by mistake when Here, let's fix it. I must have done that by mistake when I was putting my loops back and forth. The loops, all the loops on this hand, on the right hand, should be what Noemi Spicer calls open. They should not have a cross in the loop. The shanks shouldn't cross each other. They should be, the upper shank on each finger should go to the upper surface of the braid, the upper layer, which is forming that mini braid up there in the loop area, and the lower shanks all go to the lower braid. And what I noticed, I don't know why, but when I got ready to start braiding, that there was a twist in that thumb loop, which it's not what I want. I want this side, the right side, to be slit, to be open, and only the left side for the loops to have a turn there that connects the upper and lower surface. So luckily I caught that mistake, and now I'm going to go through all the loops, including the thumb loop, and I'm going to take it from within it, which will make it not turn over, so it comes over with no turn. Shift, 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 tighten. Through 4, and then over. So it's good to have a mantra to say, to remind yourself what you're doing. And I sometimes have students say left over and right through. But whatever makes sense. Some of them say upper and lower. Whatever. Anyway, it has to. This one on the left side has to turn. On the right side has to not turn. My mantra is usually more of turn, straight, and turn, because you can get distracted and the motions become straight. The motions become somewhat automatic, and both moves are natural, so sometimes the hand can just do the other move with not reminding it what to do. Straight. And what I want to see as I'm doing this, what I want to see in the braid is something that looks, I'm going to do that, something that looks like a square braid. I don't want to see a flat braid. It's braiding as if it's a square braid. Sometimes it might be opened a bit and look more cupped, like a C shape with the open area, the C facing the direction that the loops are not being turned. But that will make it a good flat braid. If it comes open, I talk about this on my blog. If it comes open as you're braiding, it tends to braid tends to kind of squeeze together and not be quite as fully flat, less wide. And we're going for wide. That's what we want. Okay, let's see if I've gotten down. Turn, straight, almost, when the loops are this short, straight, you barely have to I mean, they're not super short, but at this point when loops are this short, you don't have to do a lot with tightening because you have such a big angle on your loops relative to the fell of the braid that it almost tightens itself. If I had longer loops, you would see me do more of a you know, wide stretching tightening move and rocking it more, and not necessarily pulling harder, but putting more effort into it, because this is, let me make sure I didn't make a mistake. And as I said before, the way you kind of look at that, whether you've turned one or not, is by putting your fingers through and kind of opening it up. Everything looks, to me, looks good in there. Another thing you can do with a either a divided or a flat braid is feel the groove on the side with your thumb. Well, it would go all the way through for a divided braid, but there's a groove here on the side, and if I make a mistake, I can feel something blocking that grooved area, and I don't feel anything. Let's see, let's braid just, why don't I just braid all the way down, and then we'll look at it, rather than, how much time do we have? A little time. Rather than taking it off now. I could show you some finessey things about that, but I think I'm not going to do it. Through. It's possible. I just started making these videos, and I have knowing me, I have a feeling that I'm going to decide I didn't do a good job and want to do them over again. If you bookmark this or something, and a while later you go to find it and you can't find it, just look for me, and I might have made an improved version. I just know I'm leaving things out that I should be pointing out. Okay. One thing that would be good to show would be how fun it is to subdivide the braid at the end. I've made fringes before on other, so probably can guess what I like to do. But okay, so let's see. I'll park the, before I park I should walk them down. That makes it easier, because since the thumb loop is held in a kind of a funny position, you have to be careful when you're putting it somewhere. In fact, when I put my loops down on a holder from 9 loops or more, I never lay my thumb loop on a holder from the thumb. I always walk it down, because then I know when I'm lying it on the holder it's going on the right way. I would say, if I had a lot of loops, I would put all these earlier loops on first on the holder, and then walk the thumb down and put it on from the index finger. I just don't feel nervous about putting it onto anything, even parking it here. So I'm parking it on my, unless I were going to park it thumb to thumb on the other thumb, that's another option. Then you just pick it back up that way and you know it's right. But for putting it on a finger, I move it down there. Okay, so now I will unwind myself, get the emboss. Let's just see this braid. It looks pretty much like a square braid. You can see the area here that was the loop. This part is square, where I started. This part down here that looks sort of square, I can see there's a groove in there, but it braided as it should have, pretty square, fold it over, and now I'm going to open it. And actually, usually anytime I take a braid off, I squeeze it together all up and down its length to kind of relax it from the lengthwise stress of braiding, the lengthwise tension of braiding. It makes it look better, and it makes it easier to unfold the flat one. So I squeezed it towards itself, and I'm gonna open it like so. I braided it pretty tightly. It's nice and firm. You can vary your tension. It's just the inside of the braid, and this is where, if you've made a mistake, it usually shows more on the inside. There'll be say I had turned a loop by mistake that should have been open or unturned, straight, unreversed. There would be an X, a long float of 2 loops across there. I'm not seeing that, so that's good. The 2 sides, and you open it up, and then I grab the very outer edges, and I pull even more. You want to really make it all the way flat as it's going to be. There, and that's the back. Here's where it's opening up. If this braid had been, let's squeeze those in together too. If this braid had been flat all the way from the top, the hole, the slit would be in the middle like this. On a square braid, the hole is through side to side. Yeah, this looks fine. It's got the chevrons in the middle. On a fully flat braid, as I show on my blog post, you see 4 columns of, let me see where I should hold this. You'll see 4 columns, they're called ridges, or at least that's what Noemi Spicer calls them, 4 columns of, I'm not following the colors, I'm just looking at the way they're stacked, the way the threads are stacked going in one direction. So this one on the edge, then there's 2 columns in the middle forming V shapes, and then there's on the other side they're A shapes. That doesn't have anything to do with its A fell or V fell really. It's just the chevrons in the middle, and then a column on the outside. If you do this braid, you're trying to do a flat braid, and you end up with only seeing 3 columns, and it's a very different pattern. I call that the 3/4 flat braid, and it means you've been braiding too tightly. And you really can braid this braid tightly and not have that happen. I mean, this is quite tight. This is a tight braid. Or, I mean, those V shapes are very flat. They're not very deep V's, and that means it's a tight braid. So it isn't that you can't braid the braid tightly, but you can't braid it too tightly, I guess. And I suppose also with 9 loops, it's less likely for that to happen than with 5 to get the what I call the 3/4 braid. The 3/4 version is actually very nice. It's good to be able to do it, but you don't want to have it always come out that way. Okay, so there's the flat braid. If I were going to keep braiding it, I would fold it back. It's helpful for it to braid in 2 layers. I think coming open is what deforms it into that, because then it gets squeezed together. Anyway, I won't go into that again, but if I were going to keep braiding, which I kind of am, I only have 2 minutes. I would like to show how you can divide this braid into little braidlets. I've gotten my loops a tiny bit mixed up. Let's see. So I had 2 on one finger. That doesn't look quite right. These ones were that way. You always look at the fell of your braid to troubleshoot, because you can see the last one through, the last 2 through. The pink one was the last one through. You can see where they are, and they ought to be on the lower fingers, and you can really work out a lot of problems. That if you drop your loops or whatever, you can work out a lot of problems. And I can see that loop on the first finger is twisted. Let's untwist it. So if you were going to end your braid here, and I only have a minute left, but you could put some down on a holder, or even just drop them, and you can braid little braids out of these. And in fact, if you braid them divided, you can get quite a few. With if you braid these all as 3 loop braids divided, you'll end up with, there's 3 times 3 is 9, so you have 3 bunches, 3 loop braids. Each one can be braided divided, and that gives you 6 braids. So it's kind of a fun ending little fringe, which I won't demonstrate because I'm out of time. So thank you very much for watching my video. Do check out my blog, Loopbraider. The blog is called Loop Braiding. And thanks again.